No Harry Potter movie is
And
good.
you're like, give me the Snyder Cut. Oh, sorry, just walk in front of you here. Gonna put my popcorn down. Oh, sorry, gotta put this here.
Universal needs to sue Sony.
Hey, I'm an idiot. I was fired from Fox. Let me go.
I'd like actually to see Venom just crush Spider-Man.
It was weird. The screen doesn't shrink. Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. We're back today, and we've got another guest for this series. We've got Richard Berg, who is a production designer and art director for a lot of different things, including Modern Family and Gotham. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Khalil. It's good to be on your show, podcast, YouTube channel,
All of it.
all of the above.
We're so glad you could come on. And my co-host sadly could not be here today because of some prior commitments, but the show must go on. So I've got to first ask you, just so the audience kind of understands, what does a production designer actually do?
A production designer is in charge of the overall artistic look of a TV show or a movie or a music video, or even a commercial for that matter. And that involves the disciplines of the set design, which is the architecture of the scenery. It involves the painting of it, the decorating within the set, and to some degree it involves the props that are used, the hand props that are used within, and also it can extend as far as costumes, wardrobe. I wouldn't design any costumes or wardrobe, but I would work in conjunction with a wardrobe designer.
So you work a lot more on kind of the physical sets. And just to kind of, help the audience draw kind of a clear comparison, in comparison to like a cinematographer who works with more the environment, you work with more the physical, I guess, aspect of it, and not as much with the lighting and that kind of like less figurative stuff, correct? Or less literal.
Yeah, well, to some degree. I mean, I see my world as being very much in unison with the director of photography, because if you want to look at it this way, I provide the physical entity that he is lighting, so sometimes I will actually design the light into the set as well. So sometimes I'm lighting the set in conjunction with what he or she is doing. Their job is basically to do the broadest of lighting of the set, the ambient light, the lighting for the actors, and my job to a larger degree is to light the architecture, basically to light my room. So I will provide practical lights to do that and build in lights into the ceiling and et cetera, et cetera. But it's always in conjunction with the director of photography.
Okay. That's interesting. And so now let's go back a little bit to your childhood. And so what was the kind of inspiration that made you say, hey, I want to do this with the rest of my life? Like, was there a moment, a movie or something which kind of like lit a flame?
I wish I could say it went that way, but it really didn't go that way for me. I was always an artist as a kid. I was a pretty good drawer, and I really enjoyed doing it, and I liked being on my own, and that passed the time for me. So always artistic. But when I was in high school, I actually became more interested in architecture, and that was what drove me sort of into the first part of my career, which was going to architecture school and then working for an architect, both in Toronto and then the year after that working in Los Angeles for an architect. So I've always been fascinated with built environments, let's say. And then when I moved to Los Angeles to work for an architect there, that's when I started to get involved in the film business, and I had a few friends that were, pretty immersed in that field, and one of my best friends lived down in Los Angeles, also from Toronto. Richard Lewis is his name, and he's a director. He currently is a director. And he, one day said, like, why don't you be an art director? Like, you have all the credentials to be an art director. Why don't you be an art director? I actually didn't know what an art director did at that point. So that sort of pricked my curiosity, and I looked into it, and it was actually something that, wow, it's a world that I'm totally fascinated by. Always loved films. So that's kind of what launched me at that point.
So that's interesting. It's not like the typical, at least from, the other interviews we've done, where it's kind of been, a lot of them have kind of been more, they've always did the passion in film, and it was kind of developed from a younger age. But for you, you had a love, and you kind of developed it into your career in a sense. Like, you had this interest in architecture beforehand, and you said, hey, I can turn this into a career in the film industry, which is kind of really cool.
Yeah, I mean, and I still consider myself an architect, not a practicing one, but the discipline that I work within is very, very much architecture. And I'm so thankful because, if I was a professional architect and I had my own practice, if I designed and built 100 buildings in my career, I would say I'd be a very successful architect. I will do 100 buildings or 100 environments in 6 months, doing what I'm doing in production design. Now, granted, they're not the scale of a building that is going to be around on this planet for 25 years, but sometimes they're pretty sizable, and sometimes they're just as in-depth and as detailed as a real building, for sure.
And honestly, let's be honest here, they're definitely more memorable than a real building.
Well, I don't know. There's some great architecture in this world that will be memorable for ages to come.
But not all of them worked on Modern Family in Gotham, so there's that. So
that is true.
So well, first of all, we're birthday buddies. We both are born on September 8th, so that's like awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Virgo. Yay. Go Virgo intacta. That's awesome.
So I've got to ask you this because it's just, channel brand. Do you like superheroes? I have to assume the answer is yes, because you worked on a superhero show and you're going to work on another one.
I do like superheroes. I am really not a knowledgeable person when it comes to superheroes. I sort of, like, when I was born, it wasn't, actually it was definitely the age of like comic books and Superman and, Spider-Man and all that stuff, but that wasn't what I was into. I read other stuff, and I read other comics for sure. But I definitely, because of the shows that I've worked on, especially Gotham, have a keen appreciation for the superhero genre.
And now you're working on Gotham Knights, which we'll definitely talk about later on. But I got to ask you another question, which is, what's your favorite movie of all time?
I would say the movie that I come back to over and over and over again. Can I actually say there's 3 movies?
Go ahead.
Okay. I would say the third favorite movie of mine is Blade Runner, and the original Blade Runner, Ridley Scott. And then the second favorite movie I would have to say is The Godfather. Godfather Part 1, Godfather Part 2.
Okay, good. You used the right 2 parts.
And then my favorite movie of all time is 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Wow, you just gave like the 3 perfect answers to this question. Oh, that was perfect.
What are your 3 favorite?
Oh my god!
Curiosity.
Oh my god! I gotta look.
Or name one.
Name one. Oh, A Few Good Men, obviously. Easy one. That's easy. That's easy. My favorite movie of all time. Easily.
Great. I just saw it recently, actually.
Tom Cruise is amazing in everything. It's just a fact.
He is. He's a pretty well-rounded actor, especially, when you sort of see how young he was when he first started. I don't know. Risky Business, was that his first
Yeah.
one? I don't know.
It was, well, it's at that. Yeah, I think so, because he was. I think so. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. He's like spanned a lot of different types of films, a lot of different characters. I mean, now he's sort of gridlocked into one type of character. But actually, it was pretty fun to watch him as Maverick.
Yeah, and now he's hanging out of planes at like 60. So it's good for him, I guess.
Not a bad thing to do.
So let's talk a little bit about the stuff you worked on. So you worked on Modern Family, and then at least the way the timelines work, it seems like you left Modern Family to work on Gotham. I don't know if that's correct or not, but that the years seem to match up with that being the case.
I think that there was a short TV series that I did in between.
But was that kind of generally the idea?
I think in the same year. Yeah, for the most part, yeah. Within that year, I went from Modern Family to Gotham.
Was that intentional, or was that just like you just were done with Modern Family and you ended up on Gotham?
I wasn't done with Modern Family. Well, to some degree, I had maybe I was done with it. I wasn't done in the sense of like fed up done. I was done in the sense of that I think that I had provided everything that I could as a designer for that show. And at that point, I had turned over the design role to my assistant art director at the time, Claire Bennett, and she took over as the designer of that show. And I sort of ushered her into that, and stayed with it for actually a couple of years with her, just almost not co-designing because she was very much at the helm, but I was just sort of mentoring her into that position. And then after a couple of years, it felt like, you know what, she's got it. She's doing great. The show's amazing. It's still a number one show. And so I thought, you know what, time to move on, time to find a new project. And right at that time, my good friend Danny Cannon, who is the director of the pilot of Gotham, he gave me a call. It was perfect timing. He said, got the show. It's already up and running. They were already into it. I think into 4 or 5 episodes, and unfortunately, sadly, the designer that was doing the show, Doug Craner, who is just a wonderful, wonderful human being and was a very talented designer, he got sick. And sadly, he passed away. So I was brought onto that show to take over for a good friend, actually. Not the best circumstances.
Not the best circumstances, but you definitely did amazing on that show. So, there's a bright side.
Thank you. It was a fun show.
I mean, I can imagine. Now, I have to admit, I was not the biggest Gotham fan. I just never. I don't know. It's just the story itself. Just kind of was like, whatever. But I did watch a substantial part of it. I didn't watch the entire. I think you were on for 5 seasons, or so.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
And so I didn't watch all 5. It was not my jam. But I enjoyed the all the besides the story. I enjoyed all the other elements of the show, and so, Now, but let's talk a little bit about the tone change, because Modern Family, as anyone who's seen Modern Family knows, is not Gotham in any way. How's that mindset kind of, is there a mindset change, I guess, when you go from something like Modern Family, which is a 30-minute sitcom, to Gotham, which is like literally whatever you would call the exact opposite of that in every way?
Yeah, no, it really was the polar opposite end of the spectrum to Modern Family. But I was definitely up for the challenge, and it wasn't too far off from a lot of stuff that I had done before. I mean, in my music video days, we got pretty dark, and I was the art director on on Nine Inch Nails' Closer, and that really was my foray into sort of that sort of dark, subversive world that Gotham basically resides in. Um, but also just being in New York and just getting a sense of like urbanistically like what New York is versus a city like Toronto is a really good comparison or contrast actually. Um, both big cities. Toronto, New York is obviously, very worn and aged and rugged and tired sometimes. Whereas Toronto has this sort of liveliness and newness and freshness and cleanness about it. Um, but they're both big cities. Toronto is a big city. Um, so being in New York was really eye-opening for me, and just looking around and just seeing all the grit on the buildings and just the way, pollution has sort of taken its toll and aged the blocks of stone and just the granite and looking and just walking on the sidewalk and seeing how the granite is just rounded over at the corners and stuff like that. It reminded me a lot of like when I was in Greece and just like standing on the steps of the Acropolis and just seeing what hundreds and hundreds or thousands and thousands of years in that case does to stone. And you can see that very, very prevalent in New York. So that became sort of a benchmark for me to how to sort of to bring that into the show in every way that I could. That sort of decrepitude, that age, that provenance, all that stuff became really important.
So I think the biggest thing in terms of when people talk about Gotham, right, is how it's in very much kind of, I guess, in a sense like Spider-Man in New York, where the city is also a character in a lot of ways in the stories. So did you talk a lot about New York, right, in terms of like was that kind of your sole, I guess, inspiration for Gotham, or did you use other kind of cities?
Well, no, I definitely use New York as the primary, but when you're in New York, I mean, there's a little bit of Rome in New York as well. I mean, Rome is sort of the New York of old Italy, and it has the same characteristics of the decay and the patina that pollution has created on the buildings. Um, so for me, it was about ancient cities and bringing that forward and just having that sort of that timelessness, but also that like visible age and everything. That was an inspiration. And then I would go into my, Blade Runner kind of bag of references because Blade Runner was all about layering, layering of like the different like urbanistically you can see in the design of Blade Runner that it had different periods where different things were laid on top of something else. So Blade Runner to me was a very good example of a city that shows its time, like it's the age and it's built into the architecture. So I wanted that also in Gotham so that you would feel that things were added on. It's not like everything, it was like the city had grown and there's appendages to it and there were growths all over, like often we would put ducting like coming out of walls that had no business being there, but it's just one of those things that through the years, they needed to break into this wall and put a duct. So, I mean, things like that became very important for me in the design of Gotham.
So have you seen the newest Batman movie?
Yes, I have.
And have you seen the Christopher Nolan Batman movies?
Yes, I have. Are you going to ask me to compare them?
Yes. I'm asking you to compare
Please
those.
don't.
I'm asking you to, no. I'm asking you to compare those versions of Gotham to your version.
All right, ask your question.
Can you compare those two movies' versions of Gotham to your version of Gotham? And did you notice? Did you notice anything?
Yeah, I mean, the Christopher Nolan Gotham's, for me, were very like they're dark, like literally like the palette is like everything emerges from black. It's sort of an additive process with lighting. That was actually very similar to the way we designed and lit our Gotham television show, but it wasn't ever referenced to Christopher Nolan. But he created. I mean, the genre he, you know, his Gothams I thought were obviously for me anyway the best ones. But I've actually enjoyed all of them. But yeah, that was those are the closest ones to Gotham. Just starting from black and lighting from within the black.
So now I personally would have gone with an Adam West Gotham, but this is me.
Well, that's what I was weaned on for sure.
So now let's talk a little bit about Modern Family, one of my all-time favorites comedies ever.
Wow.
What was that like? Just like being around such a historic show. Like in a lot of ways, where Gotham wasn't exactly it was a popular show, but it wasn't historic in the same way. Like Modern Family would go down in history as like one of the all-time great comedies. Like how does that what was that like being around that show and working on the show like that?
I mean, it was surprisingly normative. In the first season, we really didn't know what the show was. I have to say, it was like incredibly well written. When I read the pilot, I could not stop laughing, and I don't really laugh out loud when I read a script. It was just the funniest script, and then seeing the actors, like just meeting Eric Stonestreet, and just seeing how naturally funny he is, it just brought so much more to the script. Like just seeing all the actors and sort of what they brought to it, and Sofia Vergara, and just like her craziness and beauty as well. I mean, it was just really interesting to see what everyone brought to the story. And then I think, so for the first year, I think it was really fun because they created a format that was really sort of like easy to shoot. It was like they set the template with the permanent sets on one stage, and frankly, they got the work done in a very timely fashion. We were always going home like probably around 6:00, which is unusual, like doing a 10-hour day. 11-hour day, which was, I mean, they were very well organized, and it was a great show.
That's insane. That you got home on time.
Yeah, no, they were like, Steve Levitan and Chris Lloyd, like they are very, very smart people and excellent showrunners, and they knew exactly what they wanted, and they got it. And the actors were also incredibly gifted because they could do those scenes in one take. Like oftentimes they would get it like the first time. It was just that easy for them. They were just so inside their roles. So to be quite honest, it was just entertaining to just sit there and be on stage, and it was like going to the theater.
That's remarkable. That's remarkable. Like when you say things like that, like I don't think some people can grasp how rare that is, that you're getting done on time and they're doing it in one take. Like that's like that's not heard of, at least from what I'm aware of, ever.
It honestly, it was remarkable to watch. And not only was it just like dramatic scenes that they were doing, often they were sometimes really physical. Like Eric would do a lot of physical things, pull it off the first time.
That's insane.
I'm sure sometimes they did 12 takes or something, or 18 takes or something, but honestly, they were very, very gifted, and all of them, and it was just remarkable to watch.
That actually blew my mind, because like I did not see that one coming. That's like another level of like just professionalism and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm asking you a question. It won't be tough. It won't be a tough question, but it'll make you think about tough parts of your job. What is the hardest part of your job?
I think the hardest part of my job is coming into it when my head is not sort of centered in the work. Like if I am having a bad day or I'm having, a personal issue, whatever it is, sometimes it's hard to kind of work with 50 people who all need answers to what they're doing. There's carpenters, there's set decorators, there's art directors, everyone, like there's drafting going on all the time. A lot of questions to answer. I would say 95% of the time, that is absolutely what I love about the job, is that it's just rapid fire with questions and making decisions. And it's the big difference between, the pure applied art of architecture versus what I do, which is a lot more whimsical. Like you really make decisions spur of the moment. You don't have to really dwell too long on sort of whether a building's going to fall down or not. It's not, everything we build is always safe, but I don't have to worry about it 25 years from now with rain and wind and the foundation collapsing and all that stuff. So it allows us to be very free in what we design and the speed at which we design stuff. So that is what I love. That's the very thing that gets attacked when I'm not in the right headspace.
And because when it's on TV, when it's saved forever, and there's no way that it can be ruined by rain. It's just beautiful.
No, it's the perfect architecture. We're building it for a couple of days of shooting or a year of shooting, whatever, and then that's it. That's the life of the building. You take a picture, and that's what you remember.
But it's going to be remembered forever, so you win.
Hopefully.
Now I got to ask you what you're working on now. And specifically, I asked you about two projects, a movie and a show. And I want to know what else you're working on. But first of all, talk to me a little bit about Ivy. Working with a Canadian legend who I'm going to get on this show at some point.
Who?
No.
Uh-oh. We're frozen.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. There we go. Ivy was a really fun experience, and I'll tell you what the funnest part about it is the house that we shot in. I can't tell you too much about it because it hasn't been released yet. So it's a very suspenseful science fiction piece that takes place in an ultra modernistic house, and the house is basically is wired with a sort of central computer system, not unlike HAL in 2001, which is one of the reasons I loved taking on that project, because it was very much like that. Anyway, it was a pleasure to do, and really, like, the house that we shot in was a character in and of itself, and that's what that story needed.
So this is like this is actually closer to Blade Runner than anything you've done, and I guess at least from what you're saying and the way you're kind of describing it. Is that true?
No, it's not. It's really not a Blade Runner. It's nowhere near as dark as Blade Runner. It's a different look altogether than Blade Runner, and the story, frankly, is different to Blade Runner as well.
I meant more on the futuristic side of it, like that kind of aspect of it.
But it's present day. It's present day, but the house was, as a prototype, the house was a model for a futuristic house.
Oh, okay. That's it's like Iron Man-ish. Just gonna.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not unlike that. Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about Gotham Knights now. What's the difference between that and Gotham? Like, they both have Gotham in the name. What's the difference in your mindset, at least?
Well, there are two different looks. Gotham was, as we spoke about, heavily steeped in the New York Gotham as we all know it. Gotham Knights was more it was more of a metropolis look, like a Fritz Lang type of metropolis. It had a sort of a hopefulness to the look of it. It was retro, but it was also had a futuristic feel to it as well. So it was sort of caught in two worlds a little bit. But it was also supposed to be a sequel to Gotham. So it's about Bruce Wayne's son.
So, is it hard to kind of say, like, look at a show called Gotham Knights when you just did a show called Gotham and say, I need this to be basically like very, maybe not the opposite, but like very different in style when I just did this? Like, is that hard to kind of like say, this city I just made, like just built, I've got to do something completely different for the same city?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It was a little bit challenging because I feel like by the end of Gotham, I had perfected the look that we were trying to achieve, and I had a bag of tricks there to achieve that look. And now here I am doing another show, and I'm not even allowed to open that bag of tricks.
So if I gave you a scale, okay, Modern Family and Gotham, where does Gotham Knight rank, like in between those in terms of, I guess, tone and all that stuff, in terms of like what you're doing?
With Modern Family on one end of the spectrum and Gotham on the other?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's put Gotham at the 10 and put Modern Family at the 1. Gotham Knights would be in the 8, I would say.
So it's closer to kind of that tone of Gotham than it is to the Modern Family.
Oh, hugely closer, yes.
And where would you put Ivy on that same scale?
6.5.
And where would you put?
Because it's brighter. It's brighter. It doesn't have the blackness of Gotham.
And where would you put SkyMed, which we haven't talked about yet, but
5, right in between the two.
So you're basically saying Modern Family by far is still like the most different thing you've done.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That would be that is the case. I wasn't a comedy person. Modern Family. I thought it was interesting that they asked me to do Modern Family. It was far easier for me to accept doing Gotham with my background than it was for me to do Modern Family. I mean, the only thing I could relate to with Modern Family of why I'm doing the show is because I had done a million commercials, like L'Oreal commercials, which are about sort of pristine things, and I had done some, some of them were sort of funny as well. But I mean, that's as close as I would get to the look of Modern Family in my career. Everything else was on the darker spectrum.
So now, do you have any other projects you're working on? Anything, further on the horizon?
I mean, right now I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Ooh.
And I am working for Netflix on a show called Obliterated. And Obliterated is about a terrorist organization that is hell-bent on detonating a nuclear device in Las Vegas and blowing it up. And Obliterated is about the special ops team, who are a bunch of crackerjacks, like crackerheads, that like they're basically like funny, like goofball people that are so good at their jobs. Like they're all like one of them's like an amazing sniper. One of them can disarm bombs. One of them is like incredibly strong and is able to fight anyone. Another one's a pilot. Another one is the guy that or she can basically hack into any computer system. So it's a sort of like a SEAL team of experts that are called upon to figure out where this bomb is and to try and put it down.
So you're saying Netflix is doing their own Suicide Squad, and they got the person who did the production design for Gotham and Gotham Knights to do it. That's what I'm getting here.
Well, that's your critique. I like it, but we'll leave it at that.
Hey, if they're trying to do it, the best thing to do is get someone who did an amazing job on Gotham and on Gotham Knights. I'm sure. Well, I'm sure on Gotham Knights. I don't know yet, but I'm sure he did great.
Well, we'll find out. All of those remain to be seen. Gotham Knights and Obliterated. Obliterated, we're just about to start shooting in a week or a week and a half.
That's exciting. That's very exciting.
Yeah, look out for it. It's going to be a really good show. It's not a show that it's not a script that I've come across before. It's very, very funny, very action packed, and hopefully very good looking.
I'm assuming that it's not going to be. I'm assuming this is also on the spectrum above 5.
Yeah, but it's a Vegas show. It's all about Vegas, so it's really like sparkly, glitzy, and Vegasy.
How much fun is that?
It's not New York.
How much fun is that just to make Vegas again?
It's fun. I mean, I did it for 7 years when I did CSI, Crime Scene Investigation. So it's good to be back in the Vegas world.
So we're going to do a bit of a rapid fire type thing here. Okay, you ready for this?
Okay.
And by rapid fire, I mean I'm going to ask the questions. They're going to be short questions. I'm letting you can go as long as you want with your answer. The rapid fire is more for me. If you could choose a genre, any sort of genre, and any sort of and 2 stars, what movie would you make? Unlimited budget.
Any genre and 2 stars. I would do Jessica Biel and Ryan Gosling and in some kind of like spy thriller thing.
I actually love that. And you got a Canadian legend in there, so that's like perfect. And second rapid fire question. What's your favorite music video you've worked on? And you can't use one you've already mentioned.
Oh, that's easy. Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson's Scream.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. That's yeah.
I mean, what's not to like? That was, I think we were on 5 different stages, 11 different massive sets. It was what an incredible experience, and watching him perform, like sitting right in front of him, watching him perform. What a gift.
Yeah, that's probably okay. If you had to, was that experience better than any other experience you've had working on anything?
It was right up there, I have to say. I've been very fortunate. I've had some great experiences, so that was right up there for sure.
What's second? Like in terms of music videos?
Probably working on one of the Madonna ones, maybe Bedtime Story. That was a lot of fun because I got to sort of work alongside her. And
another awesome all-time performer.
And I mean, it wasn't lost on me that I'm working with legends, and it's really humbling. I felt so lucky that I was in the position to be able to work with them, and lost by it. I would honestly, I was like a little kid sometimes, just sort of just so excited to just be in their presence.
I mean, and it's like some it's different when you're working just with regular, I guess not regular, but but you worked with all-time great performers, not even just in terms of the music side of it, but just in terms of who their presence, that just is insane to me.
it's a fun business. I mean, you get opportunities to, to sort of, you feel like you've gone out of orbit sometimes, and you're just sort of hovering and looking, down at a universe that it's like you don't know where you are sometimes. You find yourself in these places and with people and in situations that never in a million years would you imagine you would be in, but you're there. And I try and stay thankful and humble, and what a great business this is, and I'm so thankful to be a part of it.
And everything you do, like, it's just amazing, and you just always, like, you're just so good at your job. And now I gotta ask you, because you're so good at your job, what advice do you have for young people who want to kind of follow in your footsteps, who maybe just are thinking now that they're watching this saying, hey, this seems cool? What advice do you have for them?
I mean, a few different things, and it wouldn't even pertain to doing what I do necessarily. I mean, my daughter, Eve, is just going into college now, and she has been talking about going into law school for many years at this point. And the advice I would give to the world is the advice that I give to her, which is just really, really apply yourself. You have a moment in time where, a lot, you can accomplish a lot in a very short period of time, and it really counts, the time that you're in right now. So make it count, and don't hold back. Go full out, be the best you can be. And part of that is working hard, for sure. Another part of that is like socialization too, and sort of speaking to people, being kind to people, learning from people. Don't feel like you know everything, even if you do know a lot. Be humble, and never stop learning, and try and be your best self.
That's actually fantastic advice for everyone. I'm just thinking about how this relates to me.
Well, I have to say, I also just wanted to do a shout out to you, Khalil, for what you're doing right now. This show, forget that it's me, but just like the fact that you go out and interview people of interest, Canadians, and your enthusiasm to what you do, and your ability to ask excellent questions. By the way,
thank you. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Honestly,
this was so much fun. And look, hey, just because this interview is coming to an end doesn't mean we can't do future things. You're gonna have lots of projects coming out, and
you're welcome. I to call me whenever, and let's do this again. I'd love to.
And so, on that note, thank you for your time. I know you're literally, so busy right now, and I appreciate the fact that you had time to kind of chat with us and kind of give the audience and me some of your stories, which is amazing.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And you don't have any social media besides, I think you have Facebook, but that's it, right?
Yeah, I'm an old guy. I only know Facebook. I don't even do Twitter or Instagram.
You should do Twitter. Twitter's fun. But
don't have the time.
That's but then like you could like tweet all your emotions, right? Like imagine if you had Twitter when you're like, working Michael Jackson's videos. Think about it.
Yeah, I don't think he would be very happy about me doing that. But that's the other thing, is that you gotta be careful with sort of what you broadcast.
Stream of consciousness onto the internet. What could go wrong?
Nothing, I guess.
But yeah, thank you so much. And so I guess you don't have social media, so I can't promote. Do you have anything you want to promote? Any websites or anything?
No, I don't. But be kind to animals, and pay attention to what's going on in this world politically, and stay on the good side of it. That's all. That please, like everyone, like let's be socially conscious, and let's
socially aware. It's important.
Yeah, we're in a very, very difficult time right now.
thank you so much for your time, and thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, follow the channel on social media, subscribe to the YouTube channel, all that stuff that people tell you to do all the time. Why not? Do it for Richard. See? I'm gonna use you. And thank you,
Khalil.
Thank you for coming on. Again, this was such an amazing conversation, and you gave us such great insight. I'm even wearing a Batman shirt, although it's Robert Pattinson, because I don't have any Gotham shirts, but
That's okay. He was quite good.
And
thank you for having me.
We'll see you all next time then, or I will.
Right on.